right. Well, welcome everyone. Today is September 10th, 2020. I'm Mike.
And I'm Brian.
And this is what got our attention. Actually, speaking of got my attention, this week, did we see that Dune trailer? Can we at least talk about that? So, I don't know if you're a super fan of Dune, but I did watch the original. I did like it. I liked the lore. I liked there's a lot of things it seemed like Star Wars kind of took from. So it was interesting to see that movie after the fact. Like I actually watched it like recently, a couple years ago, probably at this point. But now the new Dune's coming out. New trailer's released yesterday. A lot of big name actors, and it's on YouTube if you want to check it out. It's out there. But it was very interesting to me. Do what? Of course no. I don't read books, so that doesn't happen. But I did watch the movie.
You know they made a book based off that movie, right?
Based off the movie? I think
I'm hurting people's brains by saying
I was going to say, I think it was a book first, right? Yeah.
You're hurting my brain. Yeah. That's the book way predated the movie.
Yeah.
Most of the books were out before they made the movie. In Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah, it was.
No, I'm not a Dune super fan. And I have not seen the trailer yet. I will have to check that out. I kind of get distracted by a couple of other things.
Yeah, I can totally feel you on that.
Well, and some of these things I found because of topics we're going to discuss later. For anybody who sees the tweet, it will be no shock that one of those topics is DragonCon. One of the things I actually found out about that was they're talking about the new rover that is going to Mars, actually named Perseverance.
Okay.
Perseverance. Actually named by a child in school because they write essays about what it should be named, and they send it off to Mars. And they were talking about that. They were talking about the first helicopter is going to go off of that. And they were also talking about the fact that they always make two minimum because they send one off to Mars and they have one here. So they can do things like troubleshoot and say, okay, if we send this command,
I never thought about that.
What's it going to do and things like that. They were talking about also what they had done previously with one of the Martian rovers that's already there, Curiosity. And Curiosity on it has something called the SAM, the Sample Analysis at Mars. And what it does is it gets little bits of Mars and it heats it up. And when it heats it up, that causes the stuff it heats up to release gas, and they do spectral analysis on it. And that's how they determine that there was like methane on Mars, which is really odd because it's kind of an organic chemical. It can happen other ways too, but and in the process of them, testing out the SAM both on Earth and before they sent the actual Curiosity and also on its twin, as it were. They found out that as it heats up, it can make tones. It can make sound. And they kind of did this for fun, where they were like, oh, if we do different temperature profile changes and program it in certain ways, we can change the tones up and down.
Oh my goodness.
So they created a program, tested it here on Earth, and then they sent it to Curiosity on its birthday. And they programmed it to change temperature in the SAM so that the tones would play happy birthday.
That is amazing.
It was the cutest thing.
The nerdiest thing, but that's amazing. That's super cool.
Right. And, and obviously it's not going to sound the same on Mars because the pressure's lower, so tones are going to sound different. But who cares? It's the fact that if they did it on the twin here, it does happy birthday. That's just cool. It gets to play happy birthday to itself on Mars.
Which is sad, but it does get to play it, so that's cool.
Yeah. And again, that's the Curiosity. I got down that road because I was researching a little bit about the current one that's going out.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, what have you been playing this week?
I'll say we obviously played on if you did watch the Game of the Moment, we played State of Decay 2 again, which is, Game of the Moment isn't supposed to be a new game every time. We've talked about that before. Obviously, with SAS, the whole point of short attention span syndrome is that we play games so quickly. And I was talking about some of this about the other day with somebody, and it was mainly because, nowadays with everything being early access, everything being available through like Xbox Game Pass, for example, we get like a million games.
Steam summer sales.
Yeah, Steam summer sales. I pick up a million games
you haven't played yet.
Right. So you have a library full of games you don't play. So you get to the point where you're kind of picking and choosing the games you even want to put time in, like invest in. And the short attention span, I think, from that is if the game doesn't move me, I'm going to just move on. Like I'll pick something else and I'll play that. And that's kind of what Game of the Moment's about, is us playing a game that we feel like has got our attention right now, currently, this week, and then next week it may change, or maybe it'll still be there next week. We saw Satisfactory. We played that for a few weeks at least. We still have a friend who's still playing. Like he was like breaking out schematics of like how to really design a factory, which took it to the whole other level. And we were like, wow, this is insane. But it's just really about what's capturing us.
But
what's that?
He slowed down a little bit, but he's still playing it quite a bit.
Yeah, he got promoted, so he's like upper management now, so he doesn't have the time to really like function in the bottom part of the factory, but he's still building out the top parts of the overall shipments and distribution, I think. So, but anyway, State of Decay 2, we talked about it before. It's a zombie survival-esque kind of game. It's definitely arcade style in that kind of sense. Very fun. It's a lot of things you pick up here and there. You look for resources. You have to like basically fight to survive. And we've been playing it again. I actually took over a brewery. Fitting how fitting that is with the way that I like to drink beer, craft beer, and such.
Hey, it got me to come into your game. So I was like, hell yeah, I'm there.
So not even with that, it's also a distillery.
Tasting station.
Yeah.
That you can make Molotov cocktails. So I was like, that's appropriate.
Yeah. So with that, there's also still a distillery, so you can actually make like hard liquor, like whiskey, and then also make cases of beer. And all of this stuff is like luxury items that you can use for trading with different survivors out in the open. So it's kind of a cool thing. We kind of dug into it on the higher level at this point. We were starting to kind of just really, get the base going. We've got a lot of people. We started digging in, getting more and more resources. And we had another friend join us, and we were able to get a lot more resources. He actually played the game a little bit longer than we had, so he already knew how to get certain things and how to find certain items, which was, I tell you, when I went up to that one locker and there was like 6 duffel bags of like items inside or rucksacks inside, like that was crazy. So it was like trying to find a way to get all of that back to the base with our 1 car or 2 cars we had. So interesting game of the moment. I don't know if we'll necessarily pick it up again next week. Probably not, just because short attention span, but it was definitely something fun to play again. So what about you? Have you played anything else?
You still have another one that you played.
Well, I played something personally.
Let's say it was a Xycia like genre.
Yeah, Xycia like. He's trying to make a coin out of this whole thing. So I played another game. I played a game called Green Hell, and if you're familiar with a couple game of the moments ago, we played a game called The Forest. It's very similar to that. This game is probably the closest survival simulator that I've played in a long time, at least that I can remember. And it is, right up my alley, obviously, but also it takes place in like the Amazon jungle, as opposed to like in a crashed island kind of thing. There are natives, but they're more of like a Indian tribe, like a Native American tribe that's like there in the Amazon. And the premise of the story, like just playing a little bit from like the tutorial, is like they're like a tribe that doesn't have any outreach to like the culture in the world at all. Like they're locked into their little culture and that's it. And so they're very, wary about travelers and guests and having people in their rainforest and do different things. So that's kind of the idea. And but with that, like that's just part of the game. The other part is just surviving. So you're basically, like I said, in the Amazon, and you have to, in most games, you have to eat and you have to drink. And that's typical. If you want to survive, you got to eat food and you got to, cook your meat and then basically drink some water. Maybe if it's a real survival kind of game, they'll say like, you got to drink clean water, as opposed to dirty water, or, whatever like that. Like DayZ is similar to that.
Yeah, I saw you running along and you like looked down at this plant and saw something in it that ended up being bones. Why you saw bones in a plant, I don't know. And then you started stabbing it with your spear.
Well, there was a dead animal.
So you like took out a machete and you started like, And I was like, what are you doing with this this Venus human trap that you found?
Right. It's more to that. So with the way this game runs, so there's no HUD. There is no like visual display on your screen when you're playing. So it's very immersive. It makes you feel like you're part of like the actual character. And in this game, the way to check your stats and the way to see like your map, like your compass and your time is on your phone or on your watch. Like you basically do this, a smartwatch, and you look at it and it gives you vital signs. And the vital signs is, like I said, with most games, you eat to survive. In this case, not only do you eat, you have to decide on the types of eating. So you have to eat carbohydrates, you got to eat fats, and you got to eat proteins. So to survive.
That's in depth.
Yeah. And then you still have water. So you have to drink clean water as opposed to dirty water. So not only are you trying to find like fish and things to kill.
How did you tear yourself away to do the news?
Right. So like, not only did I have to find like nuts and bananas and like a meat, I had to still find clean water, which was not easy, especially being, in the middle of the jungle. And on top of that, there's natives who want to destroy you because you're in their land, and they not only kill you, they destroy all the stuff you've built. So we literally were finally surviving a little bit, and they just came in and wrecked all of us. Like they stabbed us with spears, killed us, destroyed our camp, and it was just like, okay, well, here we are. The other surprising factor of this is these other two things. So there's one part that's called sanity. So you have sanity for being out there. So you lose sanity by having this other part. So the other part is, while you're out there, you have to check your body. Because if you ever walked through the woods or ever been in the jungle, which I haven't, but in the woods I have.
Yeah.
You got to check for like insects. So you may have leeches. Yeah, ticks, leeches, you get rashes, you get worms. So you have to constantly like click your item, and you have to actually move your arm up and down like this, like on both sides, and you check your legs the same way. And if you have leeches, you got to pull the leeches off. If you have a worm, you have to literally dig it out of your skin with you have to have a tool to do that. So you have to find something to do that. So it's super in depth. Like it's like probably the most Survivor Man or like Naked and Afraid you could possibly be without being like actually in the woods or whatever. So
I still don't understand how you even made it to work if you had a game like this.
Yeah, right. So it's
wow.
It was interesting. I really enjoyed it. I think I may even turn off the natives and just play it again, like maybe on a harder mode, because I mean it's already hard.
Weren't turning them on.
Yeah, I mean it's already hard enough. So like trying to just survive. Like I think I died maybe 5 times within the first hour, and then we finally there was 3 of us. We finally started kind of all right, you go get food, you go get water, you go do this, and I'm gonna do this, and it was tough. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was tough, but it was rewarding in the same sense. And there's crafting, so the whole crafting aspect, I don't even know half the things we can craft yet, so I'm gonna have to keep playing and figure it out. But the sanity part is crazy, because if you lose your sanity, which is, I know, I'm sorry, here we go. If you lose your sanity, you actually lose, you start seeing things and hearing things that you don't, that aren't really there. So you'll hear yourself, arguing with yourself, you'll hear other noises, and then even at the end, there's not a spoiler, but you can go watch the clip from Tuesday, or from yesterday. There was a point where I heard some of the tribesmen, they came after me, and I'm literally staring at them, and I'm like, they're right there. And Digital Janitor I was playing with, he's like, I'm standing right here, I don't see anybody around you. I'm like, no, they're right there. And then they killed me. And then they're like, well, obviously you died because you were too crazy. You killed yourself, essentially. And I'm like, nah, man, it said that I died because they thrusted me with their spear. And I was like, whatever. So fast forward, guess what? We find the tribesmen, they're actually there, and they kill us all. So crazy game. I would check it out. I think it's $20 or so on Steam if you're into that type of thing. But anyway, enough about this game. What about the game you've been playing?
Yeah, I mean, I went and jumped on a game through one of our favorite services that gets us games for inexpensive and or free. Talk about that later. And it was newly released on that service, and that's Resident Evil 7. Not a new game, of course. That's been around for a while. Pretty sure they did a virtual reality version of this game, right when it released. And apparently was nutso.
No way.
So I decided to stream it, and I started streaming it as the sun was going down. and I had my monitors up and said, "Oh, I'm not even going to bother to turn on the light. I mean, it's a Resident Evil game. I want to play this as the sun goes down. It gets dark." And it was really cool too, because like the start of the game, you're just getting into it and you're like, "Oh, I'm trying to find my wife." And you're like following down this trail and it's just basic stuff that's happening. Like you see a guy go walking by that's kind of odd and you don't see him again, but it's still daylight. And it worked really well because as I started getting deeper and deeper into it, where it was going to be darker and darker, it was getting darker and darker outside. So I was like, "Oh yeah, this is awesome."
Do you have a toilet installed in your seat? Because that's what I'd have to do to be able to play a game like this.
No, I mean, I even knew there were going to be jump scares. And I know you watched a little bit of it.
I did join the stream for a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, there's going to be jump scares. I know there is. And they tried to do them. And they just, this is early. This is very early in the game. I haven't gotten very far. But they were just so obvious that they were going to happen that I was like, "Oh, yeah, she's all up in my face. She's biting me. Okay, I'll shove her off." And she's coming back. And it was funny that she cut my hand off. I thought that I was not expecting. I was like, spoilers. She cut out, what the? And then you pour healing tonic on the stub of your arm and it stops squirting blood. I'm like, where's that stuff in real life? I need some of that like on a regular basis.
Well, that's like kind of the Resident Evil genre to total, because like there's always been like the healing herbs and you like eat that and then all of a sudden you're like healed again. So they're famous for that.
And I did find some herbs that I just haven't figured out how to mix to make them heal yet. But the graphics are cool. It looks really, I mean, again, it's not a brand new game, but it's not that old. The graphics look pretty darn good.
It looked pretty good to me.
There was some interesting physics in it where, like you run into a chair that has been toppled over and it kind of realistically moves around the room as you kind of kick it around. There's, doors that you have to open and close. I love the fact that you can open and close a door, especially when you close the door while someone's chasing you, it slows them down so that you're able to like kind of skid out of the way. You're able to like duck down and they're tracking you by sound too. So if you duck down, you don't move very much. I mean, they're searching and you hear them. They're like, "Where are you, Eric?" Or I think it's Eric is the character's name or something like that. And you hear them saying these things and you're like, that was the cool tension moment. Like the jump scares to me were nothing.
Yeah.
There was there's bugs walking around and there's some like gross entrail stuff. And you like, they have you like kind of walk in this sewage for a little bit, which at first I was like, but then I was like, it's not all that gross. It's just like water, like whatever. Thank God games don't have smell-o-vision yet, because
it'll come. It'll happen.
Oh, I hope not.
I'm sure someone will
work in the theaters, and there's no way I'm going to play a game that's smelling like sewer.
Someone will do it. It'll happen.
I hear there's multiplayer. You should play this with me. Actually, I don't know if there's multiplayer or not. I'm just joking because I know for whatever reason you do not want to play it.
Nah, I noped out on Resident Evil 2. Like I set it up. I was obviously pretty young, and like my brother I'd watched him play Resident Evil 1 for a little bit, and I was like, that's too scary. So I played Resident Evil 2. I was like, I'm gonna play this one because I'm older now. I was probably like, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something. I don't know, maybe older than that or whatever. And I played Resident Evil 2, and if you're familiar with Resident Evil 2, there's a scene at the very beginning. I mean, very beginning, probably within the first 30 minutes of the game. You turn the corner, and it pans the view to the long hallway, and you can see your character at the end of the hallway coming towards the camera. And as you get closer to the camera, it kind of pans out, and you see blood dripping from the ceiling. And I was like, nope, we're good here, we're done. And that was it. And then I watched my brother play through the rest of the game, like basically hugging his arm the whole time because I'm like, what the hell is going on in this game? So yeah, that was intense. No way.
Yeah, and admittedly, I've not really played any Resident Evils. This is really the only one I've truly played. I'll probably still continue it a little bit. I want to get past the part that I'm stuck on right now. You can see in the video that I got stuck in early. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do at this point. I'll either try to figure it out or I might cheat later and look it up or something, but I don't know. So let's get into the news, because news was popping off this week.
Disclaimer, news was popping off.
Crazy. Xycia and I were talking, we're like, hey, that's our lead for this week. And then something happened. And we're like,
surprise, it's actually not the lead.
That's our lead for this week. And it was so much that even some of the stuff that we normally would put up in the big news segments that we talk a lot about, some of those just dropped down to the shorts.
Yeah.
Because stuff went crazy this week. And probably the craziest one was Microsoft blinked. Because we have Microsoft and Sony now that have been not announcing the release dates or the prices on their consoles, because the last 2 generations, that has been a very important thing. And basically the person who has launched first and has had a better message, because it wasn't just the launch date, it was the messages behind it too, because the messages on Xbox One were horrible when it launched and people did not like that. And they went from the Xbox 360 being the top of the hill console at the time to Xbox One, which definitely did not sell nearly as much as the PlayStation 4. Part of it was price, part of it was when it was launched, and part of it was the messaging. So they've been trying to be real careful, both sides, on all of those things.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I saw so far that Microsoft kind of fell down on was because of our uncertain times or unprecedented times of COVID and everything, that
#run economy.
They had pushed back multiple of their games, and they're actually going to launch their console right now with 0 first-party games. There's no new games from Microsoft Studios on their console when it launches. They'll have plenty of other things. They'll have like the Assassin's Creed will come out, Watch Dogs Legion will come out.
Cyberpunk.
Several of these games you can. Yeah, several of these games you can purchase, prior to that and play on the Xbox One or your PlayStation 4, and they'll automatically upgrade them for your PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series, blah. And that's awesome because, like Watch Dogs Legions just announced that in this last week or so, that like, hey, we're just letting you know, we're going to launch here. And if you get it for the previous console generation, you'll be able to play it on the next console generation for free. That's awesome. So it kind of made me worry a little bit less about the 0 first party titles. But we were all waiting. Who's going to blink first? Who's going to release their prices first? Who's going to release their release dates?
Yeah, because we don't have anything.
Because
it's all rumors.
Because everybody was saying that one of them's going to say it and the other one's going to try to undercut them.
Yeah. Because
they get to go second. They're going to try to release sooner because your release dates might be able to shift a little bit. They're going to try to maybe like, okay, well, we'll tighten the belt and we'll set the price a little bit lower. And so Microsoft ended up blinking. Kind of. Because what happened was there was a leak. And
which we've been hearing lately. Like we've heard a lot of rumors, like a lot of like quote unquote leaks.
Tons of rumors.
Rumors or whatever.
There was rumors from a Pringles South African contest, and it says, oh, well, we're going to be giving out consoles, and they have to say by law odds and the costs, total costs of the prizes and stuff like that. And they said, yeah, it's an estimate. And people said, oh, well, that ends up being this much in South African currency, which would be 849 pounds UK. And then from that, they suddenly went to, that means the console is going to be $599 US. And I was like, where'd you get that math from? And so we didn't even talk about it because we knew about that last week. And we're like, that was one of our stories we're considering. We're like, it's not worth it. It's too crazy how they came to this.
Yeah.
So there's been lots of leaks, and there's been leaks about what it looks like. People took took renders of the full-sized big Xbox Series X, the black one, and they kind of shrank it down to half size and colored it white. And they were like, we think that's what it's going to look like. So there's been all these leaks on price and what it looks like and release dates and everything. And then on September 7th at 10:56 p.m., a Twitter account, which has the screen name of Walking Cat, released a short clip of a video that in theory was comparing a render of an Xbox Series S with an Xbox Series X. Those names don't work well for like news and saying things audibly because S and X.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're too close. They released that, and I saw it, and I was like, it's just another rumor. It's a render. It's another render. People are rendering all this stuff. Yeah. And I went to sleep, and I missed the cool stuff. So we have basically this release, and I'm showing the actual Twitter, and it's got just this quick clip showing the Xbox One S and then showing it against the other console. And again, that was like 10:56 p.m. September 7th. And then interestingly enough, Xbox posts a nice little tweet of a character going, "Oh, yeah." And that was like at 2:07 a.m., 2:07 in the morning, September 8th. Because they were probably, and some of it was, again, hours later, they were most likely looking at how people were responding. And some people were making jokes. Obviously, it's the internet. Some people were, dissonant. Some people showed some interest, but they saw a lot of traction. I mean, there's currently over 764,000 views of Walking Cat's video.
I would say it's more of like an awkward face reaction from Xbox, almost like
sure.
Oh, you caught me doing something I wasn't supposed to do. Like that's kind of like what that meme looks like to me. I wish I knew the name.
Which of course they didn't have to put out.
Yeah.
But I think they recognized that they were getting some positive traction here. So they posted that, and then a little bit over an hour later, at 3:13 a.m. September 8th, they said, let's make it official. Here's the Xbox Series S. And hey, guess what? It's $299.
Wow, that price point is low.
Yeah, it is amazing. And we'll get into a little bit more of that in just a second too, because there's some importance there. And they didn't stop there. The next day, they released a video that has so far gotten 1.8 million views. And mind you, the people who are on Twitter looking for this stuff are not the average buyer. It's the enthusiasts like we are. Right. I'm emoting to the camera, even though no one can see me because I've got this up in front of my face. But yeah, they said, hey, it's all digital, next-gen console. So no physical media, faster load times, higher frame rates, richer, more dynamic worlds, next-generation game performance, smallest Xbox ever. And that was just the base stats that they put out there.
Yeah. Hashtag power your dreams.
Yeah. And so it was some really cool stuff. And then they continued to give more information the next day. They said this console it's a lower GPU than the X. Yes, but it will still do 1440p at 120 frames per second. My current gaming PC does 1440p at about 100 to 120 frames per second without any ray tracing.
Yeah.
And this should have the ray tracing in it. So if they're doing that, I'm saying, well, if you've got a 4K TV with the adaptive frame rate, or at least above 60 frame rate, it can probably do 4K at 60 pretty solid.
Yeah.
If it's doing 1440p at 120. And again, that's like the theoretical max. They're not going to run every game all the way up to 120 frames per second at 1440p.
Right.
And that's also not really a TV you're going to go out and get.
Yeah.
As far as I know, there's no TVs at 1440. Those are monitors. You could plug it into a monitor though. They're getting pretty big. There's 32-inch monitors out there. There's 34-inch monitors.
Using a 32 right now?
Yeah, right. There you go. And they said, hey, it's going to have the same speed CPU, the same speed SSD in it, but the SSD is going to be 512 gig instead of 1 terabyte. Okay. It's still going to have the expansion slot on the back so that you can plug in their proprietary, because it's a proprietary connector, expansion card that will also run at the same speed as the hard drive on there. So you can upgrade it to a terabyte, which if you talk about, let's talk about all digital and only 512K or 512 gig. That's Call of Duty and one other game.
That's gonna come out real quick.
So you're gonna need that expansion.
Yep.
But still.
But yeah, if you're into playing one game at a time, one game at a time, play it, delete it, play another game.
And if you're someone who does not have a gaming PC, or you have an older gaming PC that doesn't have ray tracing or anything, it's $300 to get you into a pretty nice little machine that you can play on your 4K TV and have ray tracing, and then throw on Xbox Game Pass and get a ton of games.
Well, that's to get yourself into the next gen of consoles at that. Like, not only, if you don't have a PC and you're behind, like, not only are you doing it, $300 gets you in. $300 is a Switch. You can buy a Switch for $300. You can buy now the next gen, which I'm not saying the Switch isn't bad or is bad, but it's the next gen consoles for $300. Like, that's unheard of. I don't think I'm trying to think what was $300. I think it was like, I want to say the PlayStation 2 may have been $299. And that was like, what, in 2004 or something like that?
Yeah.
So
it was PlayStation 3 and 360 where the prices had PlayStation 3 famously do at a very high price.
Yeah.
PlayStation 2. That's the era where it was $300. And I mean, you're not going to be able to build a PC for $300 that does what this machine does, at least not quite as comparably, without cutting a lot of corners.
Yeah. If you had a PC, you could probably upgrade it somewhat for $300.
Right.
Which should basically be a decent card.
Maybe
some RAM, give or take. I mean, it really would be.
I mean, you might be able to get a 2060 to get some ray tracing in there for $300.
Yeah, 2060 is about 200 and something. That's actually what I'm running.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's just a fantastic price that they're going to be working with to really get some of these people in and not be low end. So I find this interesting because Microsoft blinked first, but they kept going on after this. They announced the price of the Xbox Series X at $499, $500.
Yep.
So $300 price point, $500 price point. Pretty good there. And they announced the release date of November 10th, which is the Tuesday after those controllers that we saw that had November 6th.
Yeah.
So that makes November 10th the second most important Tuesday in November for our country. Then they did something else that I don't think people realize the importance of. They said, and full pre-orders open up September 22nd. Now, PlayStation recently said, hey, you can pre-order the PlayStation, but we're only going to do it for a limited number of people, and you got to prove that you're a PlayStation fan. I get that. It's kind of weird. It's a little weird, but I kind of get it. I mean, they want to make sure that, that it isn't going to like resellers and stuff. So, I mean, that's kind of cool.
And that's fair because I hate when that happens.
But they did say it was going to be a very limited number. They didn't say how many. I don't know if it was 1,000 or 10,000 or what, but they said part of the first production run is going to be set aside for our true fans. And that's cool. That was a really cool message. Microsoft said, nope, everything pre-order. You can go out and just pre-order everything 22nd. And what that pretty much means is PlayStation now has a deadline. Sony has a deadline. If they don't tell people the price by the 22nd, people are just going to go out and buy the $300 console.
Yeah.
There's a section of people that are going to do that. So Microsoft, even though they blinked first, they're kind of forcing Sony's hand of like, okay, we went first. Now it's your turn. And guess what? You only have 12 days or 14 days. You have 2 weeks to tell us what your side of the story is. Otherwise, it might just be too late for you. So this whole thing's been really interesting. And then the best part, or at least Xycia's favorite part, is
it's
reactions.
Great. It's great. The reactions were great.
Oh my goodness. Good. I love this. This is why the internet is so awesome. People are like, yep, I'm looking at that thing and all I can see is a front loading washing machine.
So I've already seen these and I'm still laughing because they're just funny. Like they're
great.
There's a slew of these that were reactions from the actual post.
Oh, there's a slew of them. This is Xycia's favorite.
I lost it.
Please place order here. And it shows it in. And by the way, that's a Culver's.
That's a Dairy Queen.
Pretty darn.
That's
a Dairy Queen. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It looks very much like a Culver's, but no, I agree with you. It's a Dairy Queen.
Yeah, but that's literally like it's like if you're not watching, it looks like a speaker that you talk into to order your fast food.
They've got a little camera here on the side.
Oh my goodness, that is so funny. Dying.
And I like this one too.
And this guy, he's like carrying.
The guy's just got like a boom box right up on his shoulder, and the big old fan grill, the front of the 360 or 360, the Xbox Series S looks just like a boom box sitting on his shoulder. So the reaction has just been priceless. Been loving it, and that's not even. They weren't even done with the news, were they, Mike?
Nope. Because that was the first initial mic drop, right? They kind of had a leak. Then they said, well, if we're going to announce it, might as well just drop it. And they did. And then they picked it back up because they realized at that time they weren't actually finished with all the announcements they had to make.
Yep, that's when they did the X.
and then they came back out and then said, by the way, I know, and this is actually a quote from Microsoft itself. They just said, like, today we're excited to announce the next step in this journey. We're teaming up with Electronic Arts to provide Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and PC members with the EA Play membership at no additional cost to them this holiday. Which means, if you're not familiar with Xbox Game Pass, we talk about it a lot because we actually have it way before this happened. With the Ultimate Edition, if you're on PC, you're able to play the Xbox games that are released on the Xbox Pass, but on your PC. So you don't even have to have an Xbox to play these games. Well, with this partnership, they're saying you can now also play any EA game because EA used to have Origin, which was their launcher that they were using, and they had a $5 pass. And you could play any of the EA games, so sports games like your Madden, your FIFA, and all of those, and then along with like your Battlefield, your Titanfall.
Two of the biggest sports games.
Yeah. So
and FIFA's bigger than Madden.
Oh, absolutely. Like, huge. Yeah. So with all of that now included in a pass,
Titanfall 2, Plants vs. Zombies, the Mass Effect series, Skate. We talked about Skate and how Skate's coming back.
Yep. So
The Sims. I mean, like, these are not small games.
I mean, just with the sports games.
The Battlefront, the Battlefield and Battlefronts too.
Yep. So with all of that, typically on Origin, it was $5 a pass for like the low level, and then you could buy a higher level if you wanted to. Well, they disbanded Origin, and Origin basically, EA was like, all right, so Steam, they made a partnership with Steam, which was released not too long ago. They said, if you, on Steam, you said you could buy the pass, basically $5 or $10 for the EA Play Pass, and then you can get those games on Steam. Well, they made a partnership without announcing it to anybody. It's just, they came out right after this announcement and said, also, if you buy Xbox Game Pass with, the new console, you're going to be able to get the EA Pass along with this EA Play, which is going to give you all of those sports games, all of everything we just mentioned. And it's only going to be on PC and on console. And it's only going to be like maybe $10 a month or $15 a month, depending on the membership level that you buy.
Yeah.
And people who already have it.
It doesn't add anything to your Xbox Game Pass price. The different prices are just what Xbox Game Pass you have.
Yeah. So like for us, for example, we already have the pass, and we're just going to now have EA games along with that, which is super exciting because I was a huge Battlefield fan, and Battlefront's really fun. And I used to play Madden back in the day, but I'm not super into that. But I would love to play it again. I'd check it out. And so just having that, like they literally just dropped the mic again. And basically this article is from their Xbox Wire. It's from their website, and it says like, a lot of this basically just describes like, they've they're really appreciative of their fans and the people that follow Microsoft, and it wouldn't be possible without them. And they're just really just caking it on, just hey, we did this, we're dropping the mic again, and we all thought that was it, and that's still not really it.
Yeah, I just drop after drop after drop
So
of news.
once the second mic drop happened,
it was all within a space of a couple of days. Because again, it was the night of the 8th, the leak happened, or the night of 7th, the morning of the 8th when they started dropping this stuff.
Yep.
I mean, just Tuesday and Wednesday, all this news came out.
Yep. So the other announcement they now announced after that is, because the Game Pass, we're talking about that, right? Well, this isn't.
Did you say when? Just to be clear to everyone, this partnership will be starting holiday season this year, so it's not yet.
Yeah.
Don't
I
go
said
expecting
this
to
holiday.
find Madden right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, I didn't stress on it, but that's a good point. So the other part of this,
it'll be probably around launch day or around Thanksgiving, one or the other.
Yeah. So the other part of this, along with like the Xbox One, they decided to do a rent to own, essentially, like a payment plan you can do, a financing option. So if you don't want to pay $399 or $499 out the gate, you can actually do a payment plan, and that way you can still get the pack, like the new console. And but with that, they've actually added a little flavor to that as well. So they only said, not only do they say you could pay for the payment plan to get the series, which is over a 24-month period. If you do the package, you're going to get the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate as well. So PC gaming along with your console gaming and the new series and the new console for only $24 for the low end, $24.99 a month for 24 months with no upfront cost. And you get with the Xbox Pass, you're getting over 100 games
with zero APR.
Yeah. At least 100 games.
No interest.
Zero APR. No interest. 24 months.
Now, and I've read up a little bit on this, because this is something they did, like you mentioned, they did this previously on the Xbox One and the Xbox One S and X, both of them. And it was very similar. It was $25 for the lower end one, inexpensive one. And it was about $35 for the more expensive one.
And that's the same thing that's happening here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so they're doing about the same thing now, except for back then they kind of like were testing the waters. It seemed very trial-ish. So a lot of people were actually surprised they continued it for these ones, even though they had mentioned that they might. It's a soft credit check, so that's the good part. It isn't like a hard credit check that can affect your credit, that you have like that you have that hit your history and can affect things. But please be aware, you're not guaranteed the zero APR. You have to have good enough credit to get the zero APR. So that does not apply to everyone, which is kind of a bummer, because the people that might most want to get this are the budget conscious people, because like Mike said, it's $25 a month for 24 months. Well, if you take the $15 a month of Xbox Game Pass out of that, that's $10 a month for the console for 24 months. That's $240 for a $300 console. You're saving $60.
Yep. If you do it this way.
And if you get zero interest, that you're not paying the interest. But even then, even if you get the zero interest, you got to be careful. You miss one payment and then you get, I believe, a $27 fee. You miss a second payment and possibly subsequent payments, it's like $58 or $48. Yeah. So it's a significant hit if you start missing payments on it. And there's also other terms that may apply. I've seen a lot of similar deals like this that you might get 0% APR, but if you don't pay it off in time or you miss your payments, that they can charge you interest for the entire life of that loan. Because this is credit. This is a loan, actually.
And that's what I was gonna say. That's a good point to mention. This is a financing option. This is not through Microsoft. They specifically say it on the website. It's actually through Citizens Bank. Under Citizens One is the brand name under Citizens Bank. So this is a form of a credit that you're opening up with a bank. Now, plus and minus of that is, if you don't have any credit and you can do a soft check and potentially pay this off, you're going to gain some credit out of it. But with the negative, if you do end up going this option and you do miss a payment, like he said, APR, that can really stack up and really affect you later, because that's something that, and the thing is, a lot of, like, I would think, young gamers, like even 18 plus that can afford credit cards and actually get those, are going to be people that may not think about it right offhand. And then let's say they work and then the next month they can't afford it. And then they start racking up that debt that, Citizens is hoping that's going to happen, but Microsoft just wants to give you the option. So it's available. Don't get me wrong. It's a really great option, especially if you just want to be able to, get it cheaper, hopefully get 0 APR, and then also play it, right now. So
yeah, and on both options, you end up saving money if you qualify enough. And if you don't qualify enough, maybe you don't save money, but you probably don't lose a whole lot. And like Xycia said, you might build up your credit. But it's good to have that knowledge ahead of time so that buyer beware, that it might work for you. It might not be a fit for you. It might be better just to save up the money and purchase it. But at least there's, like you said, Mike, there's options out there.
Yeah. And to me, the biggest option there is the fact that it's a financing option, because back in the day when you bought anything, mostly consoles, you put it on layaway. And what that means is you don't get to play it now. You put it on layaway, you make your payments, and then eventually you can get it. But at least you have it. It's there as long as you pay for it, but you don't get to play it now. This option, you get to play it now, pay for it while you're using it, and then potentially, pay it off come the 2-year mark. So really neat.
But on the negative side, it's also a loan with a legal contract.
Yep.
So it isn't like you can say, "Oh, I'm not going to pay this anymore, so here you can have the console back, and then I don't have to do anything." No, you're still have a legal agreement to pay this loan off.
Yep.
So pluses and minuses.
Yeah, I mean, obviously look into it. Be an informed buyer. Do your research on anything that you buy. And if this sounds like this is something for you, that's great. Not only if you do this option, you'll get the 24 months of Game Pass Ultimate, which, like I said, if you have a PC, you can play it on your PC. Any of the games that you have on Xbox, you can play it on PC. So super great news. And it just, I couldn't believe the amount of things they announced. And unfortunately, that is the full announcement that we have for the Xbox Series. But basically, 100 plus games for free just by paying for the pass. And I can't stress it enough. Like I said, we're not sponsored by Microsoft or anything like that, but it literally is a great option to do, especially if you have a PC.
So going from some super great news to some super mixed news.
Super mixed news indeed. So DragonCon, it was this past weekend. So if you're in the Atlanta area, or if you are familiar with DragonCon as a convention, if you're a cosplayer or a party goer or whatever it may be for panels or whatever, DragonCon was this past weekend. Usually takes place over Labor Day weekend. Unfortunately, because of COVID pandemic, which along with every other convention this year, they had to cancel in person. And what they decided to do, they made the announcement we talked about before back in July, and said that, obviously they can't hold it in person, but they're going to hold a virtual con. So DragonCon goes virtual.
We've been excited for this too. I've kind of dabbled in it before, and I went seriously with you last year to DragonCon, had some fun. And we've been interested because we saw Comic-Con, and we're kind of, okay, what can we learn? And we thought we saw how DragonCon had learned. And they were talking about things like, taking questions from the audience. That was one of the big things.
Yeah, because that was one of the things that Comic-Con didn't do. And we heard a lot of people complain about the same things we said, is not being able to ask those questions in a panel, which that's kind of like part of the panel, like having those questions asked. So
that's why you go to a convention.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with DragonCon typically holds about 85,000 people from not necessarily Atlanta, from all over the world, really. I've met people from all over that go to this convention. And it's a lot of cosplay. It's a lot of adult party. And I say adult party, not like adult, like sexual party.
Just drinking.
Which, that may be there. I don't know. But as far as it's just an adult party. Like, it's a lot of drinking, a lot of just outrageous costumes. And then obviously the panel side, there is family friendly as well during the day. There's a huge parade that everybody cosplays in. And there's also a mask parade.
There's an origami panel that you can get in there, and they will give you sheets, the square paper, and they will show you how to fold some origami.
Yeah, there's tons of fan panels.
Huge Lego areas too.
Yeah, so there's something for everyone really at DragonCon, which a lot of people aren't really familiar with that. When they think of DragonCon, when they hear DragonCon, they're like, "Oh, that's just a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons, like it's just a bunch of nerds." And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a bunch of nerds, but it's not just about that. Like it's a pop culture convention at this point now.
Do you know where the dragon came from? Since you said Dungeons and Dragons?
No.
The dragon was the name of the computer that they ran the BBC on, that they got together and talked about things before they started the convention. Had nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons.
That is hilarious. Well, there you go. The more you know. So if you're not familiar with DragonCon, it takes place in Atlanta. It's like I said, 85,000 people. It's typically hosted within like 4 or 5 major hosting hotels, and all of that is now gone this year because obviously we're online. So having to try to make this happen in an online space is going to be challenging. We've talked about this plenty. We knew this was going to be challenging. We knew this is the first time anybody's doing it.
In a short amount of time.
Yeah. So, ultimately...
I mean, normally they plan all year for it.
Right.
They literally have DragonCon Inc., which is a company that puts on DragonCon. Since about 2013 is when that company has existed for various reasons in the past. And they literally, as soon as they finish on DragonCon, they start work on the next one. So it was, December when we started hearing about COVID. It was, March before it was starting to get taken seriously.
Yeah.
So that's only they had to plan this in half the time.
Yeah. Well,
Literally.
So since March, they knew that COVID was a thing. And then come July is when they finally made the announcement. They held out for a little bit, but also due to restrictions per the state because of the COVID pandemic in Atlanta. They knew that it wouldn't be safe. And, even with the state law kind of stepping in saying you can't have people more than 50 people in a group. So they had to cancel it. So at least the in-person one. So with all of that being said, we attended the convention this weekend, and we both kind of attended different aspects. So there were things that, and just like normal DragonCon, there's some things that I'm into. There are some things that he's into. There's some things that my wife's into, some things that his wife's into. And we all kind of attended that virtually, which it's a different experience. And we're going to kind of just hit on some points of the things that, like the points of all of it, and kind of give you guys our opinion on how we feel like that was handled. So we're going to start from the top. As far as accessibility, I guess I'll start because I said it, and I'll let you do the next one, I guess.
Sure.
So accessibility. Meaning to me, the availability they have online, the streaming platforms, or the way that you were going to be able to attend this virtual con.
How easy it was to find.
Yeah. So going to dragoncon.org, it was very easy in the sense of, here it is. This is DragonCon. We're doing it virtual. And on the main page, it says, main panels, click this button for like the fan panels, and then click this button for the historical. They had like I think it was like DC Land, which is like their previous panels and conventions they've had. They were doing like historical contents. Like when Stan Lee was there, they had that video on so you could see the panel. So a lot of the stuff on that channel was the things that you don't typically get to see, because if you don't stand in the line, you don't get to get in. So these are panels that you may have missed because you couldn't get in. So
and I want to say too that not only did they have these big buttons for these 3 main channels, because they had 3 channels of content going pretty much the whole time, but most, if not, at least the 2 main channels, also different type of accessibility here, I know, but at least the 2 main channels also had a closed captioned version of that channel going on, which is very appreciated for people who are watching a video that can't hear.
Yeah.
That's why we close caption ours, and our own video, we close caption it. And I even go through and have a program, and I try to watch for certain things and try to fix some stuff where it messes up a little bit, because it's only about 97% accurate, which sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot when you got like 2 hours of programming. So I thought that accessibility was really cool.
The other options on the main page were they had a quick guide. So typically you get like a handbook when you first get your badge. They hand you a book that basically gives you the information of the whole con, for artists, like their bios, to the planning of what's going on. They also have an app that you can use with DragonCon typically that you can kind of use to kind of plan out your day. And so all of that. This time, the quick links, the quick guide basically was that guide. There wasn't an app this year. They didn't update the app. They specifically said that ahead of time. This wasn't a new shocker or anything, which, I mean, it makes sense. There's not really a point to do that. And I'll say that when you click on one of the panels to go to watch the videos, at the very bottom, it has the listing of the panel of the schedule. So it is there.
You can see what's
it.
coming up next. You can see what's on one of the other channels in case you wanted to switch over. They had a channel that showed Grant Imahara from 2012, which for nostalgic reasons and stuff that happened recently, I jumped over and I watched that. And he talked about how he had played C-3PO and he met Magic Johnson. And Magic Johnson was, coming over to shake his hand. So he went to do the normal C-3PO thing where he raised up his hand really fast, but Grant Imahara being a little shorter and Magic Johnson is a little taller. And fortunately, Magic Johnson had really fast reflexes. Otherwise, he would have touched Magic's Johnson.
Wow. How long have you been waiting to say that one? That was
No, Grant said that. I was actually quoting Grant Imahara.
Oh, okay.
That's his joke, not mine.
See, if I'd have watched that, that'd have been great. So
it was funny.
The other part, the quick guide on the main page as well, they also had gaming. So they always had, and something's been growing. The gaming panel, the gaming track has been something that's been kind of growing there. They partnered with MomoCon recently to bring in a lot of the Japanese arcade games, and they've had some tournaments they've done with some of the PlayStation consoles and different Xbox consoles, and even Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. So there's a gaming track you can click the button for to check into, and then there was a few other buttons to kind of give you some information, like the store. They had a merch link for all merch, so they didn't have a merchant hall, but you could go to the merch link and then. Yeah,
and that's could not part miss of the merch links. Oh, okay. And, so you set a good picture and a good stage here. Now talk to us about what you thought about the accessibility.
So what I thought about the accessibility, this is the part where it gets fun. So being that we've already learned a little bit from Comic-Con, right? We've talked about it on here. Talked about like even MomoCon not going this year, and we've talked about some other ones that canceled. So either they've done it or they haven't done it. It's a new thing. We know that. We talked about this before about what platforms they're going to be on. They said they would be on one of the updates we had. They said they're going to be on 3 streaming platforms. They weren't going to say which. And then I think I even said afterwards, well, that's a no-brainer. There's only 3 available.
Because one of them should rhyme with which.
Yeah. And Twitch was one of those. We said obviously Mixer's out because Mixer got canceled or they stopped. And so Facebook Gaming and YouTube were like, those are the 3 top streaming platforms. This is a no-brainer. Unfortunately, they picked one of those, and it wasn't Twitch and it wasn't Facebook Gaming. They went with YouTube. Now, don't get me wrong. With the YouTube, what they did was obviously they uploaded their videos of the performances they had this year, like the panels and things. But also, but what they also did is they used it for the live platform. So as we said with the panels needing questions, you could either watch the panel on the DragonCon TV, on the dragoncon.org website, watch the video live there, or you could go to YouTube and watch it live there, and then you're able to ask questions as a guest in the audience, and they would do it through their stream.
I think you're still dancing around this because you keep describing what it is. What did you think about it?
So I think there was a missed opportunity with them not reaching out to Twitch, or at least getting on the Twitch platform. They had a YouTube account already that was already set up. They used YouTube Live, which was fine. I think that was great. But to me, they really, and I'll talk about this a little bit more once we get further into this, but not having Twitch as one of those streaming platforms, I think really lost a lot of viewership, like potential even new viewership that they could have potentially had, because that people just like to check out different channels, different what's going on Twitch. And I think they really missed the mark on the Twitch platform. They really should have done that. And I've had questions too. I was like, well, maybe it's because exclusivity, because we talked about that in the past. But that only falls into place if you are an affiliate or if you're a partner. And if you're not one of those, then you're not solely tied to Twitch, meaning you don't have a contract and you're not required to follow that standard. So you can live stream on YouTube, live stream on Twitch, live stream on your website, and that's fine. So I really felt like they missed the mark on that one.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to talk about accessibility in a different way, because you're talking about like where they're streaming, and that's fine. And some of that is going to blend into the next topic, which is attendance and viewership. And we're going to get there. But I just want to talk really quickly about really knowing that. I had no clue, because they did the video directly from their website. I don't know what provider that was. They did video on YouTube, and they did video on Veeam, I think you said?
Yeah, Vimeo.
Vimeo, that's right. I don't know why I forgot that. I've seen Vimeo before. I kept trying to find out where they were doing it live so I could see some of the chat, and I couldn't find it. And I even went to their YouTube site to see, and I was like, oh, great. They're putting up some videos from the prior days. That's awesome. Like, that's really cool. They weren't putting all of them up, by the way. They were putting select. I didn't figure that out till later.
Yeah.
But they were putting some of the videos up, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. But I didn't see it live. And I was like, what's going on? And it wasn't until pretty much Saturday night. So, and those that know DragonCon know that it's, you're primarily Friday and Saturday, and Sunday is like a sharp drop off. And Thursday, you might have a little bit for the ramp up, but it's primarily those 2 days. So not finding it, I had no clue. There was no links to the YouTube, which would have been great.
So
I had no clue it was on YouTube live until I think possibly the Masquerade, which is fairly late into the game here.
So here's the problem with that. And I dug into this because I too found the same issue. I went to the website. I was ready to watch this. And I was like, cool. Well, I basically got off work and I was like, I'm going to, get some food. I'm going to sit on the couch. I'm going to watch this. And then I went to their website and I was like, where do I cast this from? I have a Chromecast. So I use Chromecast so I can sit on the couch and watch TV. I don't see a Chromecast option. I don't see a casting option on the website. So I'm like, this has to be here. Like, what's going on? They can't not do this, right? So I dug into the brochure, like the start guide, right? And in the fine print on like page 7 or 8 of like the initial rules and things that are happening, they really tiny say, available on our website along with these other sites, Vimeo, YouTube, and I think that was it. Actually, those 2 sites along with their site. And that was it. That was literally where they mentioned YouTube, not on their main page. It didn't have a YouTube link. There wasn't an icon. There wasn't anything. It was literally on YouTube that you had to go to be able to cast it without even knowing that was the ability to do that. So the other part that you're saying,
I found it by accident and way too late. So, I mean,
well, the other part, what you're saying about the videos not being available, they mentioned that early. They did say there would be a streaming pass. So if you want to watch all of the videos, you could pay like 10 or 30 bucks. I think there was like different tiers, but you could do that to watch all of the videos from this year, like live, like whenever you want to.
Yeah. Okay. And that makes sense because they're going to be losing a lot of revenue, both by cancellation and, even if the city says they can't have it, that's only going to help them so much for canceling with the hotels.
Right.
And just people not walking in, buying merch or the badges or whatever, they're going to lose a lot of revenue there. So I kind of get where they're like having this pay option. I totally support that. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
But the trouble is that it was so easy to find the basics on the front page, but it was so hard to find the stuff that you and I felt were going to be important things, like YouTube with chat, with the ability to ask questions. So, I mean, accessibility was, it was less than stellar. I'd almost say it was a fail. And I liked it. I liked DragonCon this year, and I'm saying that was pretty much a fail.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Moving on to attendance and viewership, kind of like what we talked about. Usually it's just attendance, right? Because viewership is something new for this year. attendance, I mentioned that before. It's typically 85,000 people. We're talking, I think last year it was a little light. I think the year before that, when Stan Lee was here, it was like 88,000 like people
Yeah.
in Atlanta in between 5 different hotels. It's a lot of traffic.
It's a
And
lot of
I'm
traffic.
thinking, virtually we're not going to get those numbers. Like, not everyone that goes to DragonCon is going to watch, online. And I
Well,
get that.
There's that. There's that. And we've got to understand that for any given panel, there's not going to be 85,000 people. Like the big ballroom that is for the Masquerade. You and I looked that up. The Centennial Room in the Hyatt. That's one of the larger ones.
Right.
It only holds 2,200 people.
Yep.
So we're not to be clear to everyone, and me and Mike had discussed this earlier, but we're not expecting 85,000 people to tune in at the same time either.
That's true. So, but with the attendance that we typically know, I'm thinking, let's say we get 10% of that.
Good number.
10%. Like, I mean, really, who's like the people that go to DragonCon that I know mainly go to party because it's a fun environment of cosplay and just debauchery and all kinds of crap. And that's really what a lot of people go for. But the time,
because when Mike was initially saying some things like he was a little disappointed, to just not to mince words. When he was first telling me he was a little disappointed, I literally said back, have you been drinking enough? Because that's what you'd normally be doing anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So even at 10%, that number, I'm trying to do the math here and I'm terrible at math, but basically 10% at 85. So 10,500.
8,500.
80, what'd you say?
8,500.
8,500. Okay, 8,500. So we're talking 8,500 people that potentially, out of 10%, attending the con. Even with
I think
that,
10% is even high. 5% is probably even better.
10% is probably high.
Still 4,250 people.
So even on, and we'll talk about panels and guests in a second, but even on some of the most popular panels that were like the big panels this year, even on that, I saw roughly like 300 people viewing at the same time, which if you round that up and let's say between their platform, their website, along with YouTube, and let's say even Vimeo, they had some people on there. Let's say that number is 1,000 people.
Which I think is high.
Is super high. But let's say it's 1,000. Even with that, we're still not even hitting
a quarter.
Like not even 5% of attendance.
Of what we're expecting.
Right.
Yeah, it's not hitting a quarter of what we're expecting. It's not even hitting half or 3/4 of what would fill those ballrooms. Again, to be fair, last year when I was in the Masquerade, which is one of the big draws, and is in a ballroom that holds 2,200 people, it was not full. They did not have 2,000 people in there. They maybe had 1,500 people in there. But when I'm watching the Masquerade this year and I'm seeing 300 people watching it, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is like, I even know the people that are just there to party and stuff like that. They're like, oh, well, wait a minute. We're not going to go down there, but let's tune the TV in the hotel room and so we can watch the Masquerade. And like, because I went down there physically. So I know how many people were there.
What are you doing down there? And you'd be in the room with us partying.
No, I wanted to be physically there. And just knowing how many people were going to tune in when they were there and partying, I would expect those same people to tune in here. And it was 300 people. And it was a lot less than Vimeo. Vimeo is probably going to be a third of that. And YouTube was probably about the same.
So with that, like I mentioned the Twitch platform, right? So a lot of this attendance and viewership, when I think about watching something live, I'm not going to YouTube. I'm not saying that YouTube doesn't have a good option for that, but I'm thinking more now live performances, live things are going to be on Twitch because that's typically what they do. They're not just a gaming platform now. They have everything on Twitch. So not having Twitch, to me, on this aspect, was a fail because they could have gotten a lot more viewership, even out of those people that maybe not have wanted to go to DragonCon, or maybe people didn't even know about it. They could have at least seen it on Twitch and been like, oh, let's check that out. Comparing this to, well, I'm just saying, comparing this, I talked about previously about a band, Between the Buried Me, that I watched on a Friday night, and they're very a niche band. It's a metal band, progressive metal, that is not for everyone. I mean, look it up if you want to, not for everyone, but the people that do are really, passionate about it. And with that, they usually play venues maybe that have up to a 2,000 people cap. And that's like with them and other bands that pull in people in the draw and everything like that, plus the people that go to venues and blah, blah, blah. But even with them, they pulled in 8,000 people to watch them. 8,000, and that's one performer. So
the thing is,
how?
I don't think it was Twitch. I think it was the lack of explanation of where to find it. I think that was way more important. I think that band would have done just fine on YouTube. Maybe they wouldn't have had the 8,000, but they certainly would have had, like 6,000 or 7,000 easily. It would not have been that much of a drop.
That's my point. So don't take it away as that I'm just saying Twitch. It's really about
not Twitch versus YouTube.
Yeah.
It's the fact that they couldn't get the message out there cleanly and clearly of where to tune in. If you're going to have an online thing, you have to tune in. And there's one last thing I want to say this before we move on to panels and guests. And I'm just going to touch on this a little bit because we're kind of cover this better at the end for our kind of bonus topic. But I think one of the things they didn't realize is when you have people physically attended, you have a captive audience.
Yep.
When you have people that are digitally attending, you don't. So what I mean is if someone takes the time to come to Atlanta, whether they're driving in from the suburb or they're flying in from another state or even driving in from another state, they're there and they're like, I'm going to make the most of it. I may not be wholly interested in this panel, but I'm here and I'm going to come in and I'm going to sit down and look at it. Or I'm going to go here to Artist Alley and I'm going to stand in line and get autographs from the guy that I want to see, or person I want to see, or actor or actress or whatever. Or I'm going to attend, these concerts at night, or I'm going to, and they're there for the experience. And whether they're expecting to spend 4 or 6 hours a day walking around because maybe they just don't have the stamina, or maybe they're just like crazy like we are, and we just spend 14 or 16 hours straight walking around DragonCon.
Crazy.
It doesn't matter how much. It's the point is that we're there. So we may check out things that we're not that interested in, but at least pique our interest a little bit.
Yeah, just to sit down.
If a video comes online that I'm not really all that interested in, boom, I'm gone because it's so easy to leave. I don't have that whole commitment that I've driven somewhere, I'm staying in a hotel, I've spent money, I've done all these things. And the other thing that's directly related to that is people nowadays, when they're viewing stuff online, they're typically, it's not like TV back in the day, back, 20 years ago when, DragonCon started 1989. Mm-hmm. So some of the guys some of the people, not guys, people that started this maybe are still used to that mentality in some of the ways, but they're used to like TV and you sat down and you watch TV. People don't do that on the internet. If I got an internet video going, I'm playing a game or I'm doing work or I have something. I'm multitasking when I have that. I'm dual screening.
Which the closed captions come in handy for. Like we said earlier, like I had it up. I could see what they're talking about. I don't have to have the sound on. I can watch it.
Yeah. And I don't think them or Comic-Con and we'll see for PAX online because we might have the same problem there. I don't think they're accounting for the fact that people are dual screening. And that's going to hurt them for the viewership numbers. Really, and just so some actual numbers here before we move on to the next thing, which is panels and guests, is the Masquerade brought in 2,600 people. Not the 300 we were talking viewing. This is after they posted the video on YouTube. Since then, only 2,600 people have viewed it, and that's one of the biggest ones. There's a couple that are bigger, but some of the other big things is their awards had 397 views. And a lot of their things are in the hundreds. A lot of their videos here are under 1,000 people. So they're not even picking up very much of that 85,000 that would normally, even the people are like, oh yeah, I normally would have gone to DragonCon. Hey, let me go check their YouTube video and see what they did. Let me see if I can watch some of the, they're not even picking those people up.
Yeah, they're not. So moving into panels and guests, because a lot of this is, and it's all related, right? It's all mixed in. It's all directly related to each other. This year's panels and guests, in my opinion, were just subpar. When I say that, don't get me wrong. They did have Red Dead Redemption's cast. They had some Star Trek cast members there. They had Felicia Day, who's very popular in the gaming community. They had her there. And, you know, I've seen Felicia Day there before. And even her, I think she got about 500 to 600 views that day when I was watching her live.
600 total across, because I watched that one and I jumped between the things. And it was like 600 total.
So even with all that.
It was a great interview. It was a fantastic interview.
Yeah, it was great. Even with all of that, I still didn't see anybody that really wowed me.
Lucas Malfoy, Jason Isaacs.
He was there as well. And it's even with all that, I still didn't find a Stan Lee. They didn't have a Stan Lee this year. And
but they don't.
But they don't always have that.
No, who name the one from last year?
I don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, they had the doctor. I'm sorry. No, they had the doctor
Lees.
last year. They had David Tennant. David Tennant was there last year. That was the big wow.
Okay.
And that's fine.
That's a pretty good one. But I mean, the Stan Lees and the William Shatners and the Leonard Nimoys, they don't have that every year anyway.
I know, and I get that. But even with that, there still wasn't anything else that really wowed me. Like, man. So this is maybe something that we would cover later in another point, but my biggest point with this is I feel like this year, knowing that, well, for one, it was like a conspiracy I have in my head about all of this. So you tell me last year they start booking the new show, the new con this year. Come March, we knew that this probably wasn't going to happen. And come July, they make the announcement that this isn't going to happen. And they were going to do it online. So you can't tell me that every single person they booked since last year canceled and that they had to scramble in July to pick up new artists. So, like, with that being said, that means it tells me that they never even had anybody that was, like, tier caliber of, like, really wow factor. Like, they should at least have one a year. I mean, somebody, not necessarily just Stan Lee, but they can have somebody that's wow factor. And that tells me they didn't even have that, because if they did, don't get me wrong, it's online. This would be better for people, because for one, people who don't show up, like, they give them the ability to show up.
They still had plenty of people. They had the authors. Jim Butcher, the Dresden series, which is very popular, was out there. John Scalzi, he was there. He's been a lot of Red Shirts. If you have not read Red Shirts, it's an awesome book. I can't tell you how amazing that book is. I mean, most of the cast of Voyager. Yeah. They had the cast, again, not everyone, and maybe not always the best stars, but they had a Walking Dead panel with a lot of stars from the Walking Dead.
Well, that was the Fear of the Walking Dead, which is the spinoff.
Oh, Fear of the Walking Dead. Thank you. No, thank you for the correction.
So the other flip side of that,
but some of them were from the Walking Dead too.
They had Morgan, and they had
Carrie Payton's from the Walking Dead. So they actually have been on both. It is a spinoff, so some. Well,
they had the Fear of the Walking Dead panel, and then there was also some Walking Dead guests that were just there.
Right. And I don't think the guests were that bad. They have. I'm looking at the guests, and they have nearly 40 guests here, and that's not that bad for online and for there. I am positive some people dropped out. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh no, and I get that. I'm sure people dropped out. I'm not saying that everybody would have attended. The other part of this, the flip side of this,
there's people that maybe didn't drop out, but they just didn't have the technology at home to do this. I mean, a lot of these actors self-proclaim of like, I can't do anything technical. What are you talking about? And they may not even have a webcam.
Yeah. Well, sure. On the flip side of this, though, as someone who's done business before and been in businesses and started businesses and doing all of that, to me, what this sounds like to me this year would have been a prime opportunity to try to get in new people. People that don't know what DragonCon is, people that typically have never been to DragonCon, and to be able to lure them in. So spend a little bit of money. You're going to lose money this year. You're going to take a loss. It's going to happen. If you're going to take a loss, at least spend some money to try to get some people in that aren't typically here. Because if they would have had a Stephen King, for example, if Stephen King could have been one of their guests this year, someone they've never been able to pick up or never have and never been there, like if they, let's say, would have had a Stephen King, people who don't typically watch DragonCon or go to DragonCon would have maybe tuned in. And you know what? They'd probably be like, you know what, next year I'd probably go because why not? It sounds pretty cool. There's people there that like I could meet that are awesome. And not to mention the Walk of Fame where you get to like physically see them, which.
Yeah, but.
I don't know. That's
even
my 2 cents.
Even if by some miracle they got Stephen King and we're kind of punching this one to death and need to move on. But
yeah,
even if some miracle they got Stephen King is not going to show up physically.
Right.
This is not the type of guy he is. He's not going to be there for the Walk of Fame next year.
Yep.
So
I'm saying, but like that's the type of thing they understand. It's almost like
false advertising at that point.
Well, not necessarily. It's a guest that they typically couldn't get, but now they get it online, and it just gives them people that haven't been before a flavor of like, this is the kind of thing that our convention's like. You can find these people here and see them.
But I was responding to you of like, hey, get new people. And then they want to come next year to see the Walk of Fame. And then they're going to be disappointed that they don't have people like Stephen King. Because they don't. The Walk of Fame does not have people like Stephen King.
Well, not like Stephen King. I mean, but Stephen King is on the caliber of like Stan Lee. Like that's to me like the same type of caliber. We don't get those every year. But if you do, we get all the Star Trek people and all of those things like that. We get that stuff every year. Like I've seen Hodor there. I've seen a lot of the Game of Thrones people there. And those are big stars. And like I see them on the regular. So it's like having that, like to be able to lure people, I feel like they should have spent some money. I feel like they should have taken the L and just chalked it up, spent some money to try to get some people in. Personally.
I just honestly don't think it was that bad. And I think that they did pretty well considering the shorter amount of time and the technical things that have to happen on both sides.
Yeah.
To be able to get someone to do, because to be clear, they weren't just doing an interview with somebody or having somebody in a panel. They were actually having a virtual Walk of Fame where these people had to have the technology at home set up so that they could do 30-minute one-on-one talks with a fan that had purchased it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that. Like I said, I am being a little harsh, but I feel like we'll cover that later. Anyway, let's move on. Filler content. What we got? So filler content, meaning just things that
start this one off.
Yeah, go for it.
Let me start this one off because this one disappointed me right away. Because there's nothing like looking like, and I'm going to start sounding like Mike here in a second. Because I'm the one that's like positive on this generally, where Mike, because we're doing this on purpose. We're trying to like cover both sides of it. But I was so disappointed with it. Just looked like no thought was put in this whatsoever, because DragonCon's got this great thing that in between panels or in between when you're walking from place to place, or if you're like, in the ballroom and you're waiting for the next thing to start, they got this slideshow stuff going on. It's like, it's funny little stuff. It's like, hey, at the Hyatt, don't forget, you might want to take the stairs and avoid the line for the elevator, but boy, those stairs are sticky. We know we're stuck between levels 4 and 5. Please send food if you love us, or please send food if you like us, alcohol if you love us.
And also they have a lot of the guys, I think, that work on Adult Swim. I think that since it was out of Atlanta, they're also a part of that team. They kind of help them out, make some of those slides and stuff. So it's that kind of humor.
And I can just about quote that word for word because that's one of the ones that I saw this year. And we're not at the Hyatt.
Right.
And I saw stuff about if you see a dog, it's probably not someone's pet. It's probably a service dog. And you should talk to them before you come up and pet that dog. And then just thing after thing. And like, oh, you might be up in the balconies, but make sure you don't throw anything below. And hey,
these are things on
here,
the main channels. Like this isn't just the DragonCon LAN TV. This was on the main. I saw the same thing on the main track. Panels. Like in between stuff, you would see these old things. Like it's just.
And it's not old. I don't care. I mean, because in a way they're timeless. They talk about like, proper etiquette during the con and a couple things like that. And they're funny, but they do got an actual message that is good. but they just don't apply to this one in any way, shape, or form. And I saw two in between ones that actually talked about it being virtual. And one of them was talking about getting your autographed item or autographed picture from, the virtual Walk of Fame.
Yep.
And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah. So
I don't know. Do we got that one covered?
I think that's covered. So before we move on to the next one, I was going to say, I mentioned last week that basically I had signed up for the Rocket League tournament and I was super pumped about it. And I got a team together and I was ready to play. We were going to represent SAS. And unfortunately, day of the game, I literally within the hour before the game starts, my power went out. I get a text message from Georgia Power letting me know that there had been a wreck and the power is not going to be restored until I think it was 4:30 that afternoon. Tournament started at 2. So I wasn't able to participate in the Rocket League tournament. So unfortunately, I had to take an L on that one. We got disqualified, but I was looking forward to it, but that didn't happen. So just to update for those who may have been listening for that. The next part is another huge part of DragonCon, at least for me and a lot of other people.
Both of us look forward to.
And really a lot of the reason I think a lot of people do go to DragonCon physically is for this. It's cosplay. Like the cosplay, and we mentioned this before, how are they going to handle this? Cosplay contest. And the cosplay contest, I have to say, was a W for me. That was a win. They had a cosplay contest. They had everything up early. So they said basically, submit your information, submit your photos and everything, and then kind of have to tell a story. Like tell us what you do, show us what your work is, and then the judges will look it over, and then also they'll present that stuff during the cosplay contest since we don't have a physical stage to walk out on. And the way they handled that I thought was really well. The people who submitted stuff, some people were very straightforward, here's a picture, and you saw a slideshow of just pictures, while other people even, I think, caught your eye was the people who actually did a little bit of video editing with their presentation as well.
Right. And one of the things that even my wife asked is well, how are the judges going to judge the craftsmanship? Because they go anywhere from amateur to novice to journeyman to masterwork. And they have rules on how you progress through those. It's not like an arbitrary thing. And they had videos where they just panned up a seam showing all the beadwork and they really showed close in video and pictures of the work they had done. It's fantastic. It was also interesting to see the creativity because not only did they do things like show their costume off, but one costume contest that I was watching, a novice won. And the novice one, he did his costume was good. It was amazing. It was this assault mech from Fallout series.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even believe there was a human in it because of the spindly little arms and stuff like that and the big shoulder. It was just really cool. But he used the fact that, hey, you had to do a video of your costume and send it in to his advantage. And he did things like a drone shot as the drone raised up and he was in a junkyard and being able to, see this great Fallout type background on top of that. And if you really look at it, it was clear that he was comfortable moving the costume in certain ways. And this is very, very clear when you see this live when you're at DragonCon, is that some costumes are very difficult to move in. Yeah. Very difficult.
That's part of the craft is getting it the ability to be able to move and be free in your cosplay, which is tough.
Yeah, but it was amazing because he edited this video to show off how he could move well at the spots that he could move well, whether it was bending over and looking through a broken car window. But he edited it so it did not show where he couldn't move well in this costume because you only saw him move certain ways. And it really accentuated the awesome parts about his costume, which again, the costume was still good, but the cinematography is what really sold it. And he got best of show for that costume contest. Even though he was a novice, he totally won it. And it was a combination of things. Yeah. And so, yeah, I agree. cosplay contests were a win. I think that they were able to well manage the fact that people couldn't physically come in and still have judges judge things, actual judges, people that do costume work for movies or theater, stuff like that, that come in and judge these. And there were some kind of clunky bits occasionally, and there was some technical issues, but that isn't the contest members, that isn't the contestants' fault. It was a total win.
I'll say, talking about this convention, about how it was going to be, I thought the cosplay contest was going to be a loss. I was like, I don't know how they're going to do this. And what's funny to me, this is one of the wins that I did see from DragonCon, which is great because out of all of it, DragonCon's really about the cosplay. That's what most people know for a convention, it's the cosplay. So I think they nailed it on that. I think that was great. And
so related, I want to talk about this next one really quick because we're running long on this. I want to go through these a little quicker. This next one was one that I had Mike put in that's content specific to the 2020 DragonCon online. And this was kind of specific to the Masquerade, but it did apply to other places. And that's the fact that it is a tradition. And this was a total win for me. This is where they showed thoughtfulness. This is where they put effort in. This is where they spent some time to make DragonCon online truly good and online. And in fact, it is the most viewed video on YouTube for them for this DragonCon. And that is because while there's other content that they made specifically for it, this is the standout one. It's a tradition in the Masquerade that after they're done showing up to 50 contestants that not only are cosplaying, but they usually do some type of production with it as well. Sometimes they'll sing something. Sometimes they'll sometimes they'll just move around and smile. After they're done doing that, to give judges time to judge the contestants, they traditionally play what, Mike?
No idea. Go for it.
You're kidding me. They play Duck Dodgers in a 24 and a half century. They do this every year.
I don't know if I stay around for that long.
How can you know who won? Because you find out who won after that. Anyway, so they do this every year, but they were smart about it. They knew that if they did that, they get flagged for DCMA and pulled down.
Yep.
They knew that the video would just be yanked. So they took the time and they pretty much shot for shot recreated it with fan submitted art. So at one point it's puppets. At another point, it's somebody doing animation. At another point, it's people doing live action. Eddie McClintock was in there at one point and running around and showing stuff in his house when he was describing how to get to Planet X. And Tony, who also does the Masquerade with them, did his partner in that of hey, why don't we just follow the planets A, B, C, D, and eventually get to X? And they edited this all together. And they said that some of the things that they did was they talked to the fans and they said, hey, let's get some fans saying, the classic line, it's Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century. And they had fans record this and send it in. And the fans didn't even realize what it was for. And they put this all together and they had the entire presentation done. And it was a total win because they figured out a way around it and created this thing and clearly spent a lot of time on it. Because even though it's pieced together all these different things, it's still a lot of video editing to do. It was pretty awesome.
So that I'm not even familiar with, but I'm glad that was a win for you. The one thing I want to mention back on accessibility, I forgot about, they did have it on Discord. So they had a Discord channel and a lot of stuff was going on at the Discord channel. They had channels for everything. So I will say there was a lot of activity on Discord. So if you're familiar with Discord, you could do that and you could communicate with other people. There was a lot of channels, people just talking. And they also did a lot of contests through the Discord by just setting a reaction and they would draw a random name. So
and again,
that part
I found
was
that
cool
out
too.
late.
Yeah, that was later.
That was how they were getting some of their questions. And I found that out super late. It wasn't well called out on their page. I mean, you go to their main page and you click on the thing for the tracks and I didn't see it. I saw a ton of links for people selling merch.
Yep.
But
So
Not so
the
much on that.
next topic is live performances. So every year there are specific ballrooms that have parties and specific theme parties. So there could be a Game of Thrones party, there could be a Star Wars party in Eldaron. There's usually the Yule Ball we usually go to for Harry Potter, and there's all these different theme parties and live performances. Whether it be a band up top, like with the Lord of the Rings one they have is like there's a bunch of like the I can't something other bards I can't think of what their name is, but they basically play a bunch of like Celtic music that sounds like Lord of the Rings, and even with the party on Alderaan would be a lot of DJs and things. What I missed on this one is those live performances. So I said before, like a band playing on Twitch. Well, not necessarily on Twitch here, but we didn't have those performances until 4 a.m. That's when the DJs were scheduled. They did have some live bands that I caught for a little bit, maybe like a couple minutes out of an hour. But those bands were not really that popular. They're in a prime time spot, and it was not very good. It was like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the band was fine. They were played their music fine, but for the time, like the spot that was on the main track, I would have expected something a little better. Even if a DJ was something that, to get me hyped. Because if I'm living the DragonCon life at home, I'm wanting to party at my house, like make it as close as possible. And I
get it though. It's a little bit harder because they only had 3 channels. When you're at DragonCon, some people who haven't been there don't realize that when you're at DragonCon, there's 15 different things going on at the same time. And you got to pick the one thing you're going to watch.
Yep.
So I get where when they compress that down to 3 channels, they're going to have to stretch it out more. And you're going to have some stuff on. I heard though, that when he did turn into the DJs, it was banging.
I didn't watch the DJs on DragonCon because that was too late. I was like 4 a.m. But what I did watch, I ended up switching to Twitch and found a DJ there and just partied with that. But that was part of the part that we do party with DragonCon, like late night. The parties are where we go to, and I couldn't even find that even at late night when we would typically be going. So I think that was a miss. The live performances are still good because some of the live performances were also like the D&D performances that they did, and I watched a couple of those and they were fantastic. And that was good.
And let me tell you that it's a dead even draw here. It's not a lose. It's not a win, because I remember going to DragonCon last year and we went to the Game of Thrones ones and that DJ was terrible.
Oh, that one was terrible.
Total lose last year.
But when we went to the Yule Ball, we had a blast. Or I think it was the night before that or something.
The one I told you to go to join me, that one was fun.
Yeah. So it really depends obviously on the DJ that year, but it's
both last year and this year, there were good parts and there were bad parts. And I don't think it was a draw.
I would say draw with that too.
Overall, what's your impression? So we can start wrapping this up.
So overall impression, I think to me, what it felt like was that DragonCon said, hey, we're going to be virtual. We're going to go online. And they did that. They did exactly that. They had a presence online. Was it good? Was it really what they should have done? Did they invest the time in it? I don't feel like, I'm not saying they didn't do the work. I think they didn't put the work in the areas that needed to be done. And how I felt is that basically the people who are running this, I give them props because it's a lot of work to do. And don't get me wrong, I'm definitely a supporter of DragonCon, not upset. But to me, I felt like these people were basically just they didn't have an area of being online. That wasn't their expertise. And I feel like they should have maybe reached out a little bit more to get those people to help them make this a little better.
I agree it's not their expertise. They are in the business of running DragonCon. They have not reached out to another company that helps run conventions like some of the other conventions. And most of the Comic-Cons, PAX even, they don't put on their own conventions. They reach out, like Reed Pop is one of the big ones that helps with both of those. Not necessarily San Diego Comic-Con, but some of the Comic-Cons, I believe, go through Reed Pop. I think they did a reasonable job. I don't think it was great. I don't think it was bad. I think they did pretty decent considering what they were given. I'm like not quite a thumbs up, but I'm pretty close to it on this one. But certainly there were things that could be done better. The effort was there. And there were places that I don't think the effort was there, like those slideshows, but I think that was because the slideshows were such lower priority compared to doing things like trying to get those interviews, trying to get those live performances, trying to get like a replacement for Duck Dodgers, that the slideshows became a lower priority. And that's where the effort kind of failed. And that's because they only have so many people. But with that said, let's hit the last topic so that we can get on to one of your favorite parts of the week, and then get on to the ad and shorts. What can they do better next year? And that's kind of a loaded question, because in theory, next year, we shouldn't have the same condition with COVID. It should be a little bit better. It should be where they can have a physical thing. And I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it again, they should keep the online content, because there is online content that we haven't talked about that I think was kind of unique to the online experience, that they did show the effort on, that maybe Mike missed a little bit of. I missed it a little bit because I haven't watched them too much, but I watched a little bit. And that was, they literally had like this late night show, DragonCon at night type thing. And they talked about what had gone on during the day, and they commented on it. They commented on what the current contests were, how people can get into them with hashtagging on Instagram or Twitter. And, they kept the discussion going. And it's things like that that are kind of this almost unique online thing that I believe they should invest some time in next year to augment their physical show as well. And I think that's going to be a really good thing to come up with. And because they're not trying to squeeze all of DragonCon into online, that they probably will be able to do better with the online presence next year doing that.
Yeah. I mean, for better for next year, like you said, I think you kind of nailed it on that. The only other thing I think we've learned, I guess, from this year versus next year is that out of those 85,000 people, most of them want to come to party, and they want the physical presence. And without that, they're not going to have the type of convention that they need. And if this ever happens to happen again, I think knowing that now, they may want to change the lineup on what's covered, because you really want to try to drill into the people who are going to spend the time online rather than the people who potentially are probably not going to show up. So
yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I know that we buckled in for quite a big one there, but DragonCon is an important thing to both of us, even though you've gone much more than I have. Still, thanks everyone for listening to that. And we finally got to Mike's favorite part of the week.
I think you like this too, though. You act like it's just me, but it's really you too.
I do. I'm looking forward to this as well. Both this segment and the game itself. Because that's right, it's our weekly reoccurring segment of Xycia's Cyberpunk 2077 weekly updates.
So, Cyberpunk, it's getting closer. And now with the new console out, we know that it's going to be here before that. Also with the new cards released, it's going to be a fun time. Some of the Cyberpunk lore has been released, and GameSpot has actually got a few different series videos on the different lore that they've been producing, that they've been given, and it's actually pretty neat. The first one they talk about, this one's called The History of Militech, which is basically they say the biggest weapons company in the world, the corporation in the world, and it basically goes in. It's a good video, you can watch it. I think it's about like 8 minutes long or something like that, but it's basically goes through the content of Militech, this company that starts from the ground up, and basically after certain weapons were the military were decommissioned, they kind of brought something new, and how throughout the history it basically this company has grown and grown and grown to the point where they're now the largest in the world of the now 2077 era type warfare. And it's a really neat video. I don't want to get too much into it. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but I would definitely check it out. It's on GameSpot. You can check it out. Just look up Militech, the history of Militech, and you'll find that.
That looks pretty cool. But tell us a little bit more about the game itself and the finances around it.
So that was the other thing that people started bringing up recently, because obviously microtransactions are a big deal, and we've all talked about it, and we've all worried about it. We've all wondered on any game. And so somebody asked the question.
Microtransactions are in the game.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody asked, about microtransactions, and the way that the response was, this is a quote from CD Projekt Red, the CEO. He said, well, we're never aggressive towards our fans, he said. We treat them fairly and we're friendly. So of course not, we won't be aggressive, but you can expect great things to be bought. The goal is to design monetization in a way that make people happy to spend money. I'm not trying to be cynical or hide anything. It's about creating a feeling of value. And then they continue to go on because people are like, what? And then he says, same as with our single player games. We want the gamers to be happy while spending their money on our products. The same can be true for microtransactions. You can expect them, of course. And this game is great setting for selling things, but it won't be aggressive, at least not to, make anybody happy or whatever. And so people were like, wait, what? So you're saying there's microtransactions? Like, what the hell is going on with this? Well, it came out again after that. They had to make another statement because what they actually said was, yes, there are microtransactions in this game for the multiplayer version. Now let's rewind the tape. Multiplayer version. That hasn't even been released yet. It hasn't been announced. It's been announced once. They haven't talked about a release date for that at all. And I almost forgot they were going to have multiplayer on this game at all. So they came back out. Either. Yeah, I mean, I want to play the single player. And they came back out and they stated, no, like nothing changed. Cyberpunk 2077 is a single player game with 0 microtransactions. One single purchase, no tricks. Don't believe the clickbait. And it was because of the way that these other interviews were performed, was that it seemed like they were talking about the actual game, but it wasn't. So good news is it's not. It's actually going to be an actual game, and it's going to be no microtransactions in the single player. Multiplayer will come later, and they said it'll still be fair or whatever. We'll see what happens with that. The other news that I've got, there's a lot of Cyberpunk this week, but the other part I got is they're actually teaming up with Rockstar Energy Drinks. And they're going to have 4 different flavors, or 5 different flavors, Cyberpunk branded. And you're going to have male V, the original. They're going to have female V, punched. They're going to have Brigitte, which is silver ice, Jackie, sugar-free, and then it also is Samurai Cola flavor, which will be available only in the U.S. And then each one of those...
I think when we play this game...
Gotta be drinking Rockstar.
At least each one we're going to have to drink one of these and tell the listeners what we think.
Okay, that sounds good. I may not drink the whole thing, but I'll taste it. It's a lot of sugar. So, and then also with these,
Except
there's
also
sugar-free, sure. Every can also has earned a chance you can win daily prizes like wireless headsets, hoodies, and hats. So there's also like a promotion going along with it as well. So good news coming up soon. It's almost here. And with that being said, we're going to take a moment to let you digest all of this that we've talked about and give us a break for just a second. So please listen to our sponsor and or our sponsors, and we'll talk to you in a second. And we're back. So we're going to talk about our shorts now. I think I'll let Brian go ahead and take over.
Excellent. Yeah, I want to talk about another game that we've talked about several times that
we almost need to give you an update. Like we need to give you a segment almost.
Right. Right. Phoenix Nova.
I got you.
3
Here's Phoenix Nova's Baldur's Gate 3 review. Story of the week.
Awesome. It's like I got my own theme music.
There you go.
I had that the other night. That's a different story. Anyway, a couple of things about Baldur's Gate. First of all, they wanted to let people know that even though you're paying $60 for early access, they want to let you know that if you don't want to do early access, that's fine. Don't worry about it. They're going to be $60 for the game when it comes out. They're not going to do a $70 price hike, $70 price hike for next generation gaming. They're going to be like, the game's $60. Whether you want to do early access or not, don't worry about it. $60 is what it's going to be. And that's it. The kind of little bit longer one was they send out another update about Baldur's Gate and kind of tease some more information about the multiplayer. And there's kind of 2 camps here that are very important is the people who are, you're going to do multiplayer with their friends. And there's kind of an interesting thing that got our attention, Xycia's and mine, for those that are going to do multiplayer that may be streaming it. Yeah. And the multiplayer with friends is really interesting because I've watched Xycia play Red Dead Redemption online with some of his friends. I was just a viewer at the time. I wasn't with him. And it was so amazing watching him walk up to a man who's given a mission and sat there and looked at him. And his friends were around going, "Hey, what y'all doing there standing in front of that creepy guy?" Because they didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And Xycia is like, oh yeah, I'm talking to him about this now, and we're gonna find out where we're gonna go next, and blah blah. And they're like, oh yeah, well I can't hear a thing. Are you sure you're talking to him? And it was just back and forth. Baldur's Gate 3 is going to allow a lot more interactivity when we have our friends playing with us in the game. So much so that if we start a dialogue, and it's cinematic dialogue most of the time, if we start a dialogue with an NPC for getting a mission or whatever, our friends can actually join in and see that. Now, they don't take control and they don't make their own decisions, but they can they literally can, through the screen and the menu system, comment in a way of like, oh, I like this response better.
Right.
And you can decide to go with that or not. And this is a really cool interactivity, but it doesn't stop there. They don't have to join in. They could just be walking around, and they could be very much like that Red Dead Redemption. Boy, I'm bored with you just talking to this person. He looks really shifty. I think I'm going to kill him. And in Baldur's Gate 3, if they kill the NPC you're talking to, your conversation stops.
It's just over.
It's done. They can set the bar on fire. They can pickpocket you while you're talking to the NPC. So it's just this level of interactivity that is really great. In fact, they started kind of this whole update with, you're telling your story and we're the camera and director shooting it for you. That's how they kind of explained, we're going to take the camera down from being above the players and down into the drama, right into the action. Direct quote from their Larian Gazette that they sent out. Now, for the other side, to wrap this up pretty quickly, is what they can do in streaming. And they have kind of two different streaming. They have like the Stadia, and then they have the Twitch. Both of them going to have slightly similar but different choices. The Stadia Enhanced feature, you'll be able to choose the next story path and alter what happens during your favorite YouTube creators live stream. So on YouTube with Stadia, you'll be able to help choose where they go. Yep. And on Twitch, they have a couple of things. They have voting that the streamer is going to see real time on their choices of their dialogue box. They're going to see the voting happening real time of which option that people want to choose. And this opens up some opportunities where the streamer could actually be an advocate or even a DM to their viewers, where the viewers are actually, even though they don't have the game, the viewers are interactive with the game and kind of get to choose which way the story goes. And the streamer is just kind of like doing the manual actions, including like the comment and things, but definitely for the choices of dialogue. And the other option, of course, is an interactivity with Baldur's Gate that is an interactivity with the D&D Beyond that interacts with Twitch, which is that they're able to see the full character sheet. The viewers can just look at your character sheet, look at your inventory right there on these pull-out menus right in Twitch. They can't interact with it or change anything, but it's really cool that they can see, oh, these are choices you made, and this is your strength, and oh, I can see you're better at this, and here's, they may even say, hey, dummy, in your inventory, you got this item that's really going to help you out here. So that's really intriguing, especially from the streamer point of view.
Yeah. So we had some other news from our roaming reporter, Tickle, and I want to also point out some other people that have contributed this session or this episode as well. I think we talked about James the Great from our Discord. We also have another listener and also a Discord contribution named Zarg, who also helped us out with the Xbox Game Pass article. So I just wanted to point that out while I get to this one. This one was sent in by Tickle. It was Nintendo just announced Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild prequel. Don't get excited. It's not what you think. Basically, what Nintendo said is that they have announced a Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, which is a prequel to the new Breath of the Wild, or the most recent Breath of the Wild. It is due out November 20th on Switch, and it's set 100 years before Breath of the Wild. And as Eiji Anuma said, which is the Zelda development chief, he said, this is supposed to be like the well-detailed world of Breath of the Wild with Warriors gameplay. So if you're familiar with the Hyrule Warriors setting, it's going to be like multiple battles, like you're just kind of like fighting a bunch of army and a bunch of different battles and stuff. He said, he's like, I believe this game will offer the experience of the Great Calamity battles that weren't fully shown in the original game. So, of course, they're still working on Breath of the Wild 2, which they've announced because obviously everybody wants to see Hot Ganon. So hashtag Hot Ganon or whatever it may be. And but we'll still have to wait for that one coming out. So along with that, we have currently some other Nintendo things I think you wanted to bring up.
Yeah. Again, news was popping off like crazy this week. This was one of the things that on any other week would have been in our leads, in our top stories, just because there was so much content that Nintendo dropped recently on Nintendo Direct. And that's because this is the year of Mario, and it's also the 35th anniversary of Super Mario Brothers. So they did a bunch of announcements, and I'm going to go through kind of the three top ones that I liked. And the first one is they are releasing a bundle of 3D Super Mario games, 3 of them. They're calling it the Super Mario 3D All-Stars. And it's going to be the Super Nintendo's Super Mario 64, not Super Nintendo, the Nintendo 64's Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, which, that's a contentious one right there. And Super Mario Galaxy, but not Galaxy 2, just those 3 games. And they've even done some enhancements to them. Super Mario 64 is going to run just at 960 by 720 pixels. So it's kind of 4 by 3, whereas Super Mario Sunshine is going to be running 1280 by 720 pixels. So they're stretching that one out to widescreen, giving you a better field of view. Super Mario Galaxy had a widescreen view, so it's also doing 1280 by 720 pixels. This is interesting because this game came up for pre-orders on Amazon and only 4 days ago. And it is the second fastest selling game on Amazon, just in pre-orders.
I can believe it.
They're so strong on Amazon's main US site that only Animal Crossing New Horizons has sold more copies this year. And that's per NintendoLife.com, direct quote. And also they said, the game has already outsold Last of Us 2, Paper Mario the Origami King, as well as beating last year's totals for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's already outsold.
I mean, I can believe it. It's Mario, right? I mean, that's the flagship.
It's Mario, and that's part of it for certain. But here's the rub. They're going to Disney Vault this thing. And for those that you don't know, Disney Vault will sell a video for a certain amount of time, and they're going to put it in the vault, and you can't buy it anymore. Which kind of artificially inflates the rarity of videos. Nintendo is producing only a limited run physically of these games, of this bundle. And even digitally, the game is only going to be on sale until March 31st next year. And it's coming on September 18th. So 6 months. And after that, you can't buy it anymore, physically or digitally.
Wow. They're
also releasing another game. Some may remember Tetris 99, which took Tetris and put it in the Battle Royale realm, which is very interesting, where you're playing Tetris, and if you got a lot of Tetrises or cleared a lot of lines, you could kind of send blocks to any of 99 other players and make it more difficult for them. And you kept doing that until one player won. And there was a ton of depth, a lot more than I know, where you could get badges and all these things that could make things easier for you to do and harder for other people. And you could only do it based on, what you did during that particular run. And there was there's like entire Wikipedia articles on this out there. It's just amazing the depth in there. So for the 35th anniversary, they decided it would be great to do the same thing with Super Mario Brothers. So they're going to have Super Mario Brothers 35, and it's going to be you and like 30 some odd, 35 people total. You and 34 other people are going to be playing the Super Mario Brothers level. And as you all the same level, whoever lasts the longest wins. And there's going to be things like, if you do well, you're going to send enemies over to the other players. You can even select who you send this stuff to as well. And it's going to be nice retro graphics. This would be cool, except for two things. One, there's people that have been playing this game for 35 years that will beat the snot out of me. So I'm just not going to have fun doing it anyway, because I will always lose, because there's people that have been doing this really well for 35 years. But on top of that, for some reason, this is a limited time thing as well. October 1st to March 31st. And here's the thing, is it's not even like the 3D bundle, the 3D All-Stars, where you can buy the game and continue to play it. You can only play this game from October 1st to March 31st, and then you cannot play it anymore ever. And it's only for Nintendo Online subscribers.
Wow.
So really weird there. But I mean, it's kind of an original Super Mario Brothers level. So in racing to the finish, I mean, that's definitely going to be something that a lot of people are interested in. So something that doesn't seem to be time limited. No FOMO here, no fear of missing out for this last one. And they announced a new Mario Kart. It's Mario Kart Live Home Circuit. I recommend that you go out and take a look at the video announcement for this. It's pretty fascinating. It is a physical game of Mario Kart. You have physical karts that you are going to drive around with your cell phone. And it has a little camera in those karts, and you're going to be able to see the first person view from that kart through your cell phone. And you're going to be able to drive it around. You have gates that come with the game, the gates 1 through 4, and you place them down, and that it uses that and obstacles that you move around with to determine how the track's set up. And, it's going to be using some algorithms to set up the track and everything. While you're driving around, it's going to have AR, or alternate reality aspects to it, where you're going to see the real life stuff like your couch or the sleeping cat. But on top of that, you're going to see other things that are put in there, like items to pick up. You drive over the items, you pick them up, you can throw them at the other cars. And if you hit them with like a banana peel, their physical car is going to lose control a little bit. If you hit them with other things, it will slow down their cars. If you run over a mushroom, your physical cart will speed up. Now, unfortunately, to play this with other players, which is like the only way I could see this game being played.
That sounds really strange.
Racing around a single cart by yourself sounds really boring. But for every player, they have to own the game.
That sounds
weird. If you're a parent with kids, you're going to have to buy multiple copies to be able to play it. And I keep saying cell phone, and I'm not actually 100% positive on that, but I'm pretty sure it's cell phone and not, Nintendo Switch.
Oh, so no console
as well.
New console and new game. Got it.
Yeah. So it is Nintendo Switch. So I don't think it's on cell phones at all. So yeah, you're going to have to Switch and a game for each player, which really racks up the cost of this thing. And it doesn't look like it's going to work on carpet. So you're going to have a big enough space that has some type of hard floor to play this on. So you want to talk about a niche market? Holy cow.
Yeah, I can agree. So we mentioned before EA talked about their UFC games and how they were going to start doing some of the marketing with actual live ads for companies and promotions that they were going to be doing live. And they actually did a test market. Remember with the actual Nelson communication. They were doing some testing and seeing with Rick and Morty if like players would, have any banners in the background for commercials and things, and if that would really affect players and, if people would really mind. Well, UFC came out, the new UFC came out, and it's been out for a little bit. It's been $60 to buy it, like a typical EA release for a sports game. And they, in the middle of it, they decided to, let's roll out those ads. And so there's a video on Reddit that this person posted it's a subreddit called Asshole Design, and it's a great subreddit to check it out. There's all kinds of fun things you see on there. But the comment is, EA decided to add full-on commercials in the middle of gameplay in a $60 game a month after its release, so it wasn't talked about in reviews. And this user basically talks about it. It shows a video clip of, in between the fight. It's literally a flash of like the boys from Amazon, like this commercial. And it's like, then it goes back into the game. And they were kind of upset that the fact that this happened, because, this is literally like an advertisement, and they didn't expect this when a $60 game they played. So, of course, as we talked before, immediately they got backlash on it. And shortly after that, go ahead.
Not just like an advertisement, like a soccer game where it's like showing up on, behind everything on the back banners. This thing is full on filling almost the entire screen, covering up the characters.
Yeah. And there's also a pop-up at the bottom. It's
insane how big it is. And it happens twice in very quick succession. And then there's just like a smaller banner later on. It's amazing how bad this is.
So, not something different that you probably see on TV, but this is a video game, right? We shouldn't be seeing, especially if we're paying $60 to play it. So immediately after that, I don't even
know if you'd see it this bad on TV.
Well, we'll see. But even with that being said, after that happened, immediately EA comes back, and without going through the whole statement that they made a big statement. Earlier this week, the team tuned in on an ad placement, blah, blah, blah. And immediately they rolled it back. They knew this was, it's abundantly clear from the feedback that integrated ads into the replay and overlay experience is not welcome. Well, no shit.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. Even in the ring that you just saw, the octagon, that was literally the ad on the floor. So, and that's fine. I've seen that in other games. But like ad on the floor, right, ad on the screen, ad on the banner. It was like bloatware. It's almost like those games you play on your phone that you're like, as soon as you open it up, you're like, oh, I'm deleting this because it's just ads. And it's kind of like that at this point. So that's a AAA game. So that's a
$60 game that someone paid for, and they have a full screen ad that covers up part. Again, it's not gameplay. It's part of the replay.
Yeah.
But
still. And
it's not even in the important part of the replay. I get that it's like, oh, as this guy walks back to his corner or something, of which there's 8 of them. It's not an important part of the replay, but still, holy cow.
Yeah. So they obviously failed at that. We'll see what happens with that in the future. Another thing, which is not a fail. So Ninja has officially announced his return to Twitch. So we had talked about before Ninja had left, and he was talking to different places about where he may want to go or may not want to go. Well, he's actually announced now that he has signed a deal with Twitch. There hasn't been any numbers mentioned, but it's a multi-year deal with actual Twitch as an exclusive deal. And as of today at noon, he started streaming again back on Twitch platform. And he does talk about how excited he is going back to the roots and his original fans and the things that you would expect someone to say for going back to a company that he just got paid a bunch of $1 million to play. So we'll see what comes with that. But that's where Twitch, or that's where Ninja basically ended up at. So there's that.
Sure. And in other news, there is Fall Guys, which continues to be an interesting game where people are playing and trying to be the last person to get the crown. And there is a wonderful end game that is played called Hexagon, where you got multiple levels where you are jumping from hexagon to hexagon and trying to be the last person alive. Because as you touch a hexagon, after a short amount of time, it just disappears. So you have to move on to the next one. And you can time it where you stand on it a little bit long enough and kind of jump to the next one. Well, it ends up that 2 players that were friends kind of found out a secret little hidden thing where it was them and 3 other players. So since they had played this enough times, they knew some good strategies and ended up, they were the last 2 players, and they just kind of got together and they timed each one where they stood on a hexagon and then jumped to the next one and made sure they didn't run into each other. And then they stood on that just long enough and jumped to the next one and kept doing that very slowly until they found out a little secret. Both of them hit the 5-minute timer that no one knew was in this game. That at 5 minutes, the level ends, regardless of whether someone has completely fallen to their death or not. And because 2 of them were still there, they both ended up winning the crown. So there was 2 winners on that particular round, which no one had ever seen before because no one knew about this 5-minute timer.
That's super funny.
And last, I want to revisit Gotham Knights. This is another game that I anticipate, but only recently because I didn't know about it until the DC Fandom. And as much as I think that's a ridiculous name, the DC Fandom, Gotham Knights really caught my attention as being this game where you can play up to 4 heroes in the Arkham Knight universe of Batman video games and not play Batman because Bruce Wayne dies at the beginning. That's not a spoiler. That's well known about this game. And it just was like, I saw the gameplay and I saw like the production value, and it looked fantastic. And it didn't go too heavily into the Arkham Knight combat. It was a little bit more RPG, and the ability to like change your characters, and just what little I saw really caught my attention. And then it gets better because Arkham Knights, it ends up that the original Arkham series, each one of those games basically was one night.
Yeah.
It was one night, very long night for Batman. Whereas Gotham Knights is a longer timeline. It actually lets your heroes grow. And I'm on gamesradar.com, and they said that, it's a longer in-game timeline. It gives its first 4 young heroes more chances to develop, both narratively as they grapple with a post-Batman world, and mechanically as players build out each of the heroes' upgrade path. So this is fascinating. And I saw other articles from other sources that said things literally like you could be in an area and overhear villains or bad guys talking about their plan to hit a bank the next night. And you can go back and plan with your other fellow heroes, and the next night foil their plans.
That's cool.
I was like, that's fascinating. I love that. That's kind of the immersive storytelling that I want to get involved in what is ostensibly an action game. And they go on to say, they actually quote some of the developers and said, it's an idea of how this new guard of younger heroes that are not Bruce Wayne, are not Batman, approach the problem of equipping and training themselves up, preparing and adapting for that next major threat, that next major menace that they're going to need to combat. We want to make you feel that all the work you're investing into protecting Gotham City, outlines Redding, one of the developers, regardless of whether you're dealing with a small street gang on a corner somewhere or dealing with a major supervillain like Mr. Freeze. That's super cool. That's really exciting to see that they're addressing the storytelling for all different levels, whether you're talking about the small guys or the big guys, and stretching this out over multiple days, if not weeks, so that you get this whole story told and this character arc and even the mechanics, like they said. But I'm anticipating that game as well. Should be releasing this year.
Cool. Well, that wraps up our shorts. And usually this leads into our email segment. So if you guys, if you have any kind of feedback, or if you feel a certain type of way about any of the things we covered this week, as far as like DragonCon or even the Xbox release, tell us what you feel like, how you feel. Tell us what you think, what's good. As we've said before, it doesn't have to be about gaming. You can just let us know how you're feeling during the COVID times. You just want to express how you feel from the house and just really talk to someone else. Feel free to send us an email. That email is goa@sasgaming.com, and we'll love to read it out loud, give you some feedback and talk about it. So that is what got our attention this week. If you're listening to the podcast, you can check out the podcast live on Twitch, which we're doing here. It gives you a little incentive as we take some live questions from the audience as we're viewing during the break. So you don't really get that on the podcast. But anyway, other than that, follow us on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, all that fun stuff to keep up. And we have Game of the Moment on Tuesdays. And until then, you guys have a great week. Stay safe, wear a mask, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, fam. See you later.
Take care.